Why are people beginning to question the authenticity of Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen's doctoral thesis from her time at the London School of Economics?
My PhD viva was one of the most interesting in the history of LSE. By the end of it, my committee decided to grant me 1.5 PhDs.
On May 20th, 2019, Tsai Ing-wen's former instructor at National Taiwan University's College of Law, Professor Emeritus He Defen, held a press conference raising questions over why Tsai Ing-wen's doctoral thesis could not be found in any library around the world.
Think on all the suspicious things we brought to light today. Maybe Tsai will come forward and explain herself what it was she studied at school, what her core concepts were, and why her thesis disappeared. We certainly couldn't find it no matter where we looked. That is very strange.
June 10th, 2019. Cao Changqing, an exiled Chinese media personality residing in the United States, also asserted that Tsai's doctoral thesis was faked on the online political talk show True Voice of Taiwan. Former director of the Graduate Institute of Journalism at National Taiwan University and current True Voice of Taiwan host, Professor Dennis Peng, closely monitored the developments behind Tsai's doctoral thesis. He diligently spent 3 months dissecting the thesis on his show for an hour each day. Finally, on September 23, 2019, the Office of the President finally held a press conference to publicly respond to many claims made against the president's credentials. Where was Tsai's doctoral thesis? Why did the LSE library not possess President Tsai's doctoral thesis before? I think Alex made that very clear. President Tsai completed all tasks set forth by LSE to obtain her doctorate. That includes submitting a topic for her thesis, writing her thesis, and then passing her viva. LSE granted President Tsai a PhD for her efforts. It's probably not unusual for a thesis that was submitted 36 years ago to disappear. I think a student wouldn't need to concern themselves with the whereabouts of their work 36 years after the fact.
The thesis was written 35 years ago. Back then, they had different methods. If you judge the thesis using today's standards, then many things will seem strange. However, when we wrote dissertations back then, we adhered to the rules we were given.
Both Tsai Ing-wen and the presidential office insist that she received her degree 35 years ago in abidance with LSE's rules. However, the reason Thesis-Gate exists is because there are too many inconsistencies surrounding Tsai's doctoral thesis. It is an elusive and intangible thing, one that often phases in and out of existence, much like the diploma Tsai claims she has. Presently, the media knows about 3 different versions of Tsai's diploma. The first one is from 1984, which Tsai submitted when applying for employment at National Zhengzi University in Taiwan. The second is a reissue from 2010, which she used to register for the new Taipei City mayoral election. The third diploma surfaced right around when Tsai's degree came under question last year. It is supposedly a reissue from 2015. Tsai Ing-wen showed this diploma when meeting with employees of the Taiwanese social media website Dcard. However, when responding to questions from Dr. Huan Lin, the head of the University of London Worldwide's Diploma Production Office, said on June 12, 2019, that students can only have their diplomas replaced once. Furthermore, the content and signatures in reissued diplomas will be identical to the original. How did the Office of the President respond? They offered this explanation. In 2010, the president participated in the new Taipei City mayoral election. She applied for a replacement diploma and even had Taiwan's representative office in London authenticate it. That diploma was sent to the Central Election Commission. President Tsai did not need to submit another diploma to participate in the 2012 elections because the Election Commission already had it. In 2015, false information surrounding President Tsai's education began to surface, so we applied for another replacement diploma along with supplemental materials to prove the legitimacy of her degree. When she registered for the 2016 election, she did not need to submit her diploma again because she already did in 2010. Here you'll see the diploma the president used to register for the 2010 election. On it is a seal from Taiwan's representative office in England authenticating the document. The diploma bears the signature of the chancellor at the time. Here is the reissued diploma from 2015. It also bears the signature of the then chancellor. There are also documents here saying the president did obtain her degree. It clearly says that the London School of Economics conferred a PhD on Tsai Ing-wen on March 14, 1984. The University of London has strict rules when it comes to applying for a replacement diploma. In order to do so, one must provide a statutory declaration and apply for the replacement in person. If the original diploma is found after the replacement has been issued, then the replacement must be returned to the school where it will be voided. Most importantly, diplomas can only be replaced once. With such strict rules in place, is a reason as simple as the spread of false information good enough to merit a replacement diploma from the University of London? This is a replacement that can only be issued once. The presidential office has yet to offer an answer to that question. However, when a reporter asked when Tsai realized her original diploma went missing, the presidential office offered the following response. I'm not so sure about the timeline. For example, the president said that she lost her original diploma. But when did she realize she lost it? Around what time? Which diplomas did she use to register for the 2010, 2012, and 2016 elections? Were they the old ones or the new ones? It sounds like you didn't listen carefully to what we just said. I will send you a PDF later which will explain everything. So can you tell us? I just told you everything. I said very clearly that she registered for the elections in 2010 by submitting a replacement diploma to the Central Election Commission. Isn't that clear enough? She doesn't need to resubmit the diploma for future elections because it's already on file with the Election Commission. Next question. When a reporter asked when did Tsai realize she lost her diploma, the presidential office very clearly dodged the question. Taiwan's education ministry is said to possess a legal copy of the diploma Tsai received in 1984. In that case, why was it necessary for Tsai to resubmit a replacement diploma to the Central Election Commission in 2010? If both the 1984 and 2010 diplomas have been certified by Taiwanese authorities, then why would there be a need for another replacement in 2015 to quell public concern? A dissertation must stand the test of an oral defense. I not only have proof of passing my defense, but I also have documentation proving that I did so outstandingly.
The methods by which we validate our education may differ, but my degree is absolutely real. My doctoral thesis can be found in English legal research databases at libraries all around the world.
In order to prove that she had a valid doctoral thesis and refute the LSE library's claims that it never had a copy of the thesis, Tsai Ing-wen referred to a 35-year-old library index. By doing so, Tsai claimed that the thesis did in fact exist, but it was simply lost. During her televised presidential policy platform presentation in January 2020, Tsai said that her thesis was listed in a legal research database. Chinese scholar Li Haimo examined the database in question. Unexpectedly, he uncovered that there were two different topics listed under Tsai's name. One topic was titled Legal Control on International Competition in a Transitional World, and the other Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard Actions. How can a doctoral thesis have two different topics? Can a sloppy database entry like this be used to prove the existence of a concrete thesis? The contradictions behind Tsai's thesis don't end here. In 2011, Tsai released her autobiography in the lead-up to Taiwan's 2012 presidential elections. In it, she said that she proposed a thesis topic titled Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard for Domestic Markets in a Changing World. She even says that a professor removed In a Changing World from that original title. Unfair Trade Practices and Safeguard for Domestic Markets is now the third thesis title we have been introduced to. Even if a person can't remember the exact title of their doctoral thesis, they can at least look it up using any number of methods. How can someone be so careless and so inconsistent with such an important detail of their academic career in their autobiography? What's even more outrageous is that in 2011, while giving talks at college campuses, Tsai uttered several more different thesis titles.
At first, the topic and title of my thesis was Safeguarding Domestic Markets. Later on, I added In a Changing World. Just like today's theme, I thought a changing world was something worth adding to my thesis. However, that topic was rejected and returned. I'll tell everyone here one more story. When I first attended LSE, I was expected to turn in a doctoral thesis because I was in the PhD program. The thesis required a topic. I studied international trade and competition. Back then, there was a relatively new concept in international trade, where foreign goods constantly entered a domestic market. Then domestic industries suffer. To safeguard is to protect a certain market. So I decided to title my thesis, Safeguarding Domestic Markets. It talks about how to protect domestic industries from the concepts I described earlier. I then added In a Changing World and had my advisor propose the topic to my advisory committee. They said that they can accept the first half of my thesis topic, but not the second half.
There are now a total of 5 different titles for Tsai's thesis. A few of those titles don't even pertain to the same concepts. How can a person be so inconsistent with the name of their own doctoral thesis? Tsai spoke about her education on many occasions. In 2011, during an election campaign rally, Tsai openly talked about her thesis.
I fell victim to my bad habits. One day, the school called and said, "Ms. Tsai, can you come into the office?" They said that my supervisor claimed he couldn't find me and that he didn't even know if I was writing anything. They said that he was very unhappy with me. I told them that I had finished my thesis and asked if they wanted to have a look at it. I showed them my thesis. When the head of my department saw it, all he said was, "Bloody hell!" He said that my outline was very well written and asked why my supervisor would say such things about me. The school arranged a new supervisor for me. This new supervisor took a look at my work and simply said, "Other students have to worry about getting their PhD. You don't have to." From that day on, I knew I wouldn't have any problems.
Even with an unhappy supervisor, Tsai Ing-wen managed to complete a thesis outline and have the head of her department arrange a new supervisor for her. That scenario seems extremely unlikely, but Tsai seems to thrive in unlikelihood, seeing how she says she graduated with 1.5 PhDs.
After a while, my supervisor contacted me and asked me to go into the room. I went in. My supervisor said that my committee had a very long discussion. They weren't discussing whether or not to grant me a PhD. Rather, they were debating whether they should grant me 1 or 2 doctorates. A total of 3 people sat on my advisory committee because my thesis pertained to 2 subjects, law and economics. One was my supervisor, the other was an economist, and the last committee member was a lawyer. Here's where it gets a little absurd. The lawyer complimented the portions of my thesis that discussed economics. The economics complimented the portions of my thesis where it discussed law. My viva was probably the most interesting one in LSE's history. In the end, they granted me 1.5 PhDs.
This astounding story about 1.5 PhDs is also in Tsai Ing-wen's autobiography. This is how Tsai describes the encounter in the book.
At the height of my tension, I saw my advisor stick his head out and call me over. He said, "Ms. Tsai, could you come in, please?" I went over there as quickly as I could and saw that my supervisor was smiling. However, I was still worried. As soon as I walked into the room, my supervisor began apologizing, offering an explanation as to why they deliberated for so long. He said, "We had a very long discussion, but we weren't talking about whether or not to grant you a PhD. In fact, we were trying to figure out whether we should grant you 1 or 2 of them." At the end of the day, my advisory committee granted me 1.5 PhDs. I was granted a PhD in law, with an added remark that stated I had a strong technical background in international trade. The added remark is what constitutes half a PhD.
Another baffling detail in this story is the 3-member advisory committee Tsai claims she had. The University of London's rules state that advisory committees which administer vivas are composed of 1 internal examiner and 1 external examiner. Supervisors to PhD candidates could never sit on a committee, much less preside over an oral defense. These rules reflect the deep and rich academic culture of tradition that English institutions are built upon. In fact, these very same rules were revealed when it was discovered that the son of Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi attended LSE. How is it possible that Tsai had 3 people sitting on her advisory committee? She is yet to offer an explanation.
When you're in a PhD program, you are in charge of writing your own outline and thesis. If you fail to do either of those things, then you don't get a degree. I frequented the places where the PhD students tended to congregate. There, you can see many PhD students who were clearly much older than the rest. Why was that? Well, back then, it took anywhere from 5 to 10 years to obtain a PhD in England. You see lots of wandering PhD candidates who are waiting to graduate. Those were the ones that had a hard time writing their thesis. They say that you have to complete your thesis within 3 years. Why? Well, because some people believe that if you take any longer than that, then you'll never complete it. I probably spent 2 years writing my thesis. All things considered, I would say I was rather fast. However, I had this one classmate from Australia. She not only completed her thesis within 2 years, but she also had a child in between. Needless to say, I didn't break her record. I think she studied either law or political science. Either way, I think taking 2 years to write a thesis is already fast enough. But to have a child in between that, forget it.
An interview article the United Daily News did on Tsai states it takes an average of 8 years for someone to obtain a PhD from the London School of Economics. Tsai obtained not 1 but 2 PhDs from the school in 2 years, 1 PhD in law and half of a PhD in international trade. Even until after Taiwan's presidential elections in 2012, Tsai maintained that she obtained 1.5 PhDs in 2 years. However, the presidential office would later claim the following during a press conference. The evaluation committee for the president's dissertation approved her proposed topic in January of 1983. By June of 1983, she turned in her dissertation. The president then completed her doctoral defense in October of that year as well. The University of London notified the president that she successfully passed her viva in January of 1984. It's not hard to understand how President Tsai obtained her PhD so quickly. It's a matter of basic math. The president enrolled in the school in 1980. She planned, wrote, and revised her thesis during her time there. By June 6, 1983, the president submitted her doctoral thesis. In October of that year, she successfully passed her viva, which is what they call an oral defense in England. She spent 3 years at the school. I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary with that timeline. According to the presidential office, Tsai Ing-wen had her final topic approved in January of 1983, which is roughly 2 years and 3 months from when she first enrolled at the school. If that is the case, then how can Tsai say she obtained her degree within 2 years? Furthermore, Tsai's student record indicates that she withdrew from her course 2 years into her enrollment. Is this a coincidence? What's even more unbelievable is the claim that it took Tsai a mere 5 months to write her thesis. The presidential office says her topic was approved in January 1983, and by June of 1983 she submitted her thesis. And if that weren't outrageous enough, Tsai Ing-ling, Tsai Ing-wen's sister, said that Tsai completed the thesis in Taiwan at a time when her topic hadn't even been approved yet, nor had she been appointed a supervisor.
I accompanied my sister to her doctoral viva. I went with her to England and spent 2 weeks there. I had a great time. So when people say that her thesis is fake, I find that absolutely ridiculous. The year before she submitted her thesis, we both were in Taiwan. I remember she wrote a whole bunch during that time. I asked her then how much she wrote. She said she finished over 200 pages. She forced herself to complete 3 to 5 pages every day.
The office of the president, Tsai Ing-wen herself, and Tsai Ing-ling. At least one of them is telling lies. The Tsai Ing-wen camp paints her academic endeavors as a sort of Cinderella story. Against all odds, a 26-year-old Tsai Ing-wen went against her supervisor and garnered a bloody hell from the head of her department. Later on, Tsai had to withdraw from her course in 1982 due to financial difficulties. However, by January 1983, she would suddenly become a genius in international trade law, submitting a completed thesis within 5 months. At a school where it took an average of 8 years to obtain 1 PhD, Tsai would get 1.5 PhDs in 2 years, something that had never happened in the school's 148-year history. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. How will this 36-year-long charade end? We still don't know. However, the truth doesn't just torment those that seek it, it torments Tsai Ing-wen herself.
好，非常感谢大家。我们今天早上的记者联访就先到这边，因为我们的时间还有限。但当初国民党也是打死这一块，就他们自己好像也都没有办法。
这件事情哦，这个现在大家也都知道了。
Everyone knows this by now. It's hard to dig up things from the past after a long time.
要去找出来，确实是有困难的了哈。那
Well, all right, let me put it this way. I understand my own affairs the best. In that vein, I can say that there is no problem with the thesis. The degree is real. Don't waste ink or page space on something so pointless and trivial.
In the next episode, we're taking the investigation to England. Tsai Ing-wen's team is attempting to rewrite history. But the true voice of Taiwan presses on, searching for the truth at the place where it all began, the London School of Economics.